Alright everybody, so this is me working on my own cultivator for my EOX, and the issue I was having is when I have my 3 cultivator teeth, as you can see, it goes through the ground, but there's bigger chunks left over. I've been working on for about almost 6 months or more now. Well, probably longer than that. I've been thinking about it, but I finally have come up with a solution, I think, to 2 problems. The bigger chunks from the 3-tine cultivator setup that I have, and also not having gauge wheels, which they did just come out with this, and you could most likely put gauge wheels on this, but then again, how are you going to get your tools and your gauge wheels all on the same one? Now, I don't think Tilmore does this yet, but this is going to be what I'm going to try to do to see if it works. So, first off, I wanted something to be cultivating and also act as a gauge wheel. So this is kind of what I come up with. These replaceable tines for the garden weasel. I don't know what, I forget what brand I got them from, but you can buy just the replaceable tine. I wanted to base it off of this. I mean, I know these aluminum casts break, and that's fine, because this is going to be just kind of like busting up the middles and almost seed prep for like direct seeding with my seeder. Because now as it stands, I can wait for a rain, and then I let my ground in the garden dry to where there's like dry cracks in it. Then I cultivate with my 3-tine cultivator setup, and it works good to bust it up enough for me to like direct seed up to a 1/2 inch. But I want it to be better than that. So this is what I come up with to put these guys behind the 3-tine cultivator setup. I'll show you in a second. So I'm going to use this. As you can see, this guy bolts on here, and that tubing is the same as their other toolbar. So I have a means to get that. I'm going to make shanks to attach to sets of these, so there'll be two separate tools, and then they're going to have 3 of these on each side, which should be about 16 inches, which is exactly the footprint of my EOX. So if I have 16-inch aisles, it'll work perfect. And if I want to direct seed, let's see, if I have a 30-inch bed, this will be 16 inches, so it'll be 32 inches total. So I'll definitely cover a 30-inch bed to direct seed some stuff. So I'm going to use this T here, unbolt it from that, and then I'm going to create an extended hitch that goes all the way up past that 3rd bolt and about 6 inches past out here, so I can have these guys behind this. So then these garden weasels will break up the bigger chunks that those throw out, and I believe that it's going to work really well. I believe it'll work pretty good for using it as a depth gauge, because it's not going to get any deeper than that axle right there. If I have 6 of them behind this, I'm thinking it's going to work good as a gauge wheel and also a cultivator as well, so it'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And I think that it will work pretty good for direct seeding and stuff, but we will not know until we get this out in the ground and give it a shot. So we're going to go ahead and get some fabrication done and do some welding, and we'll be back. All right, so for the sake of video, just a loose fit up here. So this is what I'm thinking. Not very thick steel. I believe it's like 1/8 of an inch. If I weld that pipe top and the sides, little stitch welds on them, not very big, it doesn't need a whole lot, enough to help keep that strength in that angle. Then these guys will pop in here like that, drill a hole for that inset 1/4 bolt there. At least that's what fits in there, if I can get it to focus. Get a little hole in there and drill a hole down those pipes. These will fit in, set screw will go down in those. Those will go in there. I'll have 3 of them, which should equal about 8 inches or so, because together 2 sets of 3 will be 16 inches roughly to fit the size of my EOX footprint. And then to attach them, I believe Just do something about like that. You can weld these pieces at angle onto there like so. And yes, that's a shank of aluminum. So I'm trying to keep this as light as possible, hence aluminum cast, which, yeah, it's probably the weakest link this guy is right here. My ground is not very rocky. It doesn't have a lot of sticks because I keep it clean. So I think it's going to be a good solution for weight versus durability here. And I've tested this bar out by trying to bend it and mess around with it every which way. And just for it sitting straight up and down, I'm pretty sure it's going to do just fine, because that clamp on that T over there is going to be about halfway up here, which will allow me to control the depth as a depth wheel, as a depth gauge wheel, and also a cultivator. So it kills two birds with one stone. I think this is going to work pretty good. All right, so let's go ahead and get some fabrication done, get some welding done. All right, so this is the gist of what I got going on. I got these pipes tacked to that angle iron. Gonna weld them after I run a few tests on it to make sure it's what I like. Got these nuts welded on. If they start backing out, I'll just use some kind of thread locker or something to keep them in. But the only downfall I see to this is maybe if like a stick got caught in there, it might break some tines if they got caught, because all of them's working together, which could bind all of them up at the same time. But then again, I'm going to keep everything pretty tidy. I don't have rocks in my beds, and as you can see, what I was saying earlier, they're not going to get no deeper than like 2 inches with all them axles the way they are like that, and those 3-tine cultivators in front of it. I think this is going to be awesome. Like, I am so stoked about this. I think it's going to be freaking awesome. So, this is going to solve a few issues. It took a little bit to get this fit up perfect, so a little bit of a stickler sometimes, but I think 2 sets of these are going to be awesome. Now let's take it over here and show it what it looks like. So if you can imagine, I can just rest it there. I'll have 2 of these. I'll have 2 of these on the back of this EOX. I'll have 2 of these on the back of this EOX, and I think it'll work really well because I can move them out and in with that T-bar that goes on there. And I could also leave a gap in the middle if I want to straddle some weeds. I could take one of these garden weasels out to skip a plant if I wanted to do it that way. It's pretty flexible, and this is the way I kind of designed it. I mean, it's pretty much the head of a garden weasel that's kind of mounted on all this stuff. And I looked hard for some form of garden weasel head where I wouldn't have to do this. I could just buy the heads, but none of it worked out with these toolbars the way I wanted them to. So I'll put those 2 pieces of angle iron on there and that aluminum shank, and hopefully that's strong enough, because all the weight's resting on here straight down, because these are going to be straight up and down. Hopefully that works. If it don't, I'll give them a little bit of a cant where they're folded in a little bit. I'm thinking if I keep them straight up and down, the strength won't be an issue, because you got everything resting on those cultivator teeth and those, so it's a pretty big footprint spread out over about 20 by 20 spot. So I think it's going to work pretty good. Now, it's going to look pretty wicked, and I'm going to keep them as close to those last 2 teeth as I can. That way I don't try to kick this on accident, because that's the only issue that I can see having here. And honestly, with them keeping them up close like that, I shouldn't have that issue. So I'm hoping this all works out pretty good. Other than that, I'm very satisfied with how this is going to look so far. Hopefully everything keeps falling into place. All right, so the plan that I have for this shank that's supposed to go in here, I just have this 1/8 of an inch tubing, which is the same outside measurements as this, and this inner tube here, which is exactly the same as this, but it's a little loose inside there. So I'll probably tack a little something on each side to get it to fit just right, but this should slide all the way up in there. It'll be bolted down 3 times, which will have some washers in there, so it holds this down tight. Now the other issue I got is this plate under here. As you can see, that plate is bolted to there as well. I want to replace that with an aluminum shank, 1/2 inch thick, the same as the other one. And it's going to have about 4 or so inches sticking out. So this is going to rest on there like that, and it's going to be bolted down in between here and those 3 over there. So it's going to be pretty stout. Now this is just going to be my extension here. 6 inches is a little overkill, but I wanted to make sure I had enough in case I wanted to try something different. So I think that's going to work pretty good. 6 inches might be a little overkill, but that bar to that T is about 2 inches or 2.5 inches. And then the T comes out and my tools will come out and come down, so it should work. And as I said, this is all just me tinkering here, trying to solve problems that I got with this thing, trying to make things a little bit better for my depth control and for me to be able to not use a tiller at all. That's my goal here. Now, I still got a little bit of work to do, so we're going to go ahead and get to it, and we'll just pip in at the end of this whole project so you can see how it works. Okay, so now that we've got this assembly complete, got this whole thing assembled. Don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to try it. Pretty ecstatic about it. I mean, as you can see, 2 sets of these should cover like 8 inches a piece. I'd say I'm going to measure to the center of that, measure to the axle to axle, because it's probably going to be buried to there, I'm guessing. So probably 8-inch cultivating at about, let's see, roughly maybe 2-inch depth at the most, probably. And I have 2 sets of these. Aluminum, which I'm worried about. I mean, I think it'll be fine. It's not going to be a ton of weight on this stuff. I think this is going to work. But nothing's going to prove me wrong more than giving it a shot outside in the field. I think this is going to work very well. I hope so. I really hope so. So let's go over here and try it out. So as you can see, this guy's going to mount in there the same as that. They will come straight down instead of being kicked back like these are. They will come straight down like that. They will go straight down from there. And hopefully these guys will do the job that I want them to. This is just my take on trying to fix 2 problems at once. So this will be trial 1. After I get these done, might even paint them up. Might paint them up, see how it looks, and get this thing mounted after I build the next one. Probably paint them a little bit, just kind of keep some rust off of them, and hopefully it works. If this aluminum works, I will be ecstatic. Less weight. I think it'll work pretty good, but we'll see. Okay, so we got this thing pretty well mocked up. As you can see, mounts on there nicely. Now how well it works is beyond me. This is just what we're going to be doing here, just for a test run, for a couple runs, and then if it starts working really good, we'll get it all dressed up and make it look nice. Not too shabby. Just enough to clear those tines. I did have 1 extra hole to come back, but the farther you come back, the closer you get to your feet catching it. So I wanted it as close as possible. So in theory, these will break up the bigger chunks, and these will keep the depth from getting too deep, hopefully, and chunk it up a little bit finer. Get those chunks ground up a little bit finer. I think it'll work pretty good. Now we just got to take it out and give it a shot. All right, everybody, this is the new toolbar, as you can see, and we're just going to show you us assembling our new cultivator on here, just so you can kind of get a good idea of what we did to get where we are. So I'm just going to go ahead and set the camera up, and you can kind of check it out. Okay, so this is a steel plate here that they put in here for strength. And then I got my third cultivator here, which you can't put in there unless you get a longer bolt, because the bolts that come with it are too short to make it through to put a cultivating tooth here. So I had to get a third bolt that was longer. And this is the plate that I have to replace it for the cultivator. Just a 1/2 inch aluminum shank. I believe it's 1 1/4 inches by 1/2 inch. And then this goes on here like this. And then this is the hitch extender that I made to go in there. This just slides in here like this. Fits right in there, close enough for me. Start with this long bolt, go through this tooth here. Put the nut on top, that way it holds that cultivating tooth square. Put that nut on there. We're going to drop this one down, get everything all lined up. So these are going through that extra tube in there. That hitch extender is going all the way through past to here, like so. And we're just going to snug this all up with our fingers for now, just so you can kind of get an idea. So I extended this aluminum bar out just to add strength, so I could drill a hole here if I wanted to bolt that part together. But so far, it is not needed. I haven't really done any rigorous testing yet, but so far it's not needed. Get this one snugged up so that tooth don't fall out. Okay. Got that snugged up. Okay, so as you can see, that aluminum shank doesn't go all the way out to the edge, and that's for a reason, because it interferes with the new cultivator that I devised, I guess you could say. So we're just going to go ahead and mount this guy on here. Now, their specialty toolbar just mounts onto this, but I just thought, why can't you just extend this out if you're going to use like a gauge wheel system? So, so what I'm going to do is put this on here so I can run other equipment with this as well. And with this aluminum shanks here and this aluminum here, it's really not that much. It really isn't as heavier as you would think it would be. So what we're gonna do, we're just gonna get these bolts and just kind of stick it in here. And I wanted this to be as close as possible to these teeth back here. I'll show you in a minute. Let's just get these nuts tightened up a little bit. And then I have one more hole back here to where I could scoot that cultivator back one more if I really needed to. But I'm really happy with where it's at. Okay, so we got everything snugged up. Now let's go ahead and get it mounted. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. All right, so this is what it looks like. We'll just kind of give you a close-up. Okay, so as you can see, the aluminum shank comes down to here. These are replaceable garden weasel tines that I can put in there, buy replacements. They just tighten up with a little 1/4 20 bolt. And as you can see, this is exactly the clearance that I want to have. And as you can see, hopefully, there's a lot of play in there, which is, I think that's how they designed it. If everything was real tight, I have a feeling that it would just tear up on your equipment a lot more than just the bolts. So I think that's for a reason, but the play isn't bad. As you can see in the videos, it did okay in moist soil. And dry soil, I have a feeling this thing is going to conquer and do an amazing job. And for anybody wanting to know, that's pretty close to being in line there. To almost being about 16 inches axle to axle, which is the footprint of my EOX, which is what I wanted. Now, once them tines dig in that cardboard, it's not that easy to give it a turn. Now, as you can see, hopefully you can see those bolts there. These are replaceable tines, and I can take them out to skip crops, which is what I was wanting to do, so I could take 2 out in the middle to weed in between rows of crops if they was planted close together, you know, or if I just decide that I don't need all those, you know, that's the plan. I'm hoping to have more videos on this in drier soil because that stuff was pretty wet. I'm definitely liking this so far. It just went together like it was made to be like this. I don't know if they're planning on making any hitch extending things like this, but so far with me using this as a gauge wheel system, it works and I haven't had any trouble, but I haven't been testing it for over 3 weeks yet. You know, I'm going to test it this garden season and you'll definitely get more updates on that. So let's go ahead and get it mounted so we can see how it looks on the machine. In comparison, and yeah, that toolbar is a little bit bent if anybody notices. In comparison, this is just about a few inches past right there. And it's not too far back like I was thinking it might be. It actually turned out pretty darn good. Let's go ahead and get this swapped out. you can just back up to it. Goes right in there. All right, so this is exactly what it looks like on the machine. Just right there with the wheel, and just right there with the wheel, which is exactly what I wanted. Turned out really nice. And this is how it looks when you're walking with it. You just kind of step up like this when you're keeping up with it. So you got plenty of clearance here in between your feet. Worked out pretty good. It's really not that much heavier. It is a little bit longer when you turn, so you got to be aware of stuff like that. So if it was getting out there about another 4 inches, I'd be a little more concerned, but so far it seems like it's going to work really good. And as you can see, it did pretty good in the ground, but the ground was still had a lot of moisture in it. There was one spot that was dry, which is why I was like really giddy to try this out. We're gonna have more footage of this eventually whenever it starts to dry out a little better. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoyed this build video, this exclusive build video. It went way better than I thought it was going to, and I'm pretty proud of it. It looks pretty awesome. It's Garden Weasel works really well for me. We used to use them a lot as a kid, but now I can use it on the Eox. So hopefully everybody liked this video. If you liked the video, like the video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time out there in the garden. Have a great day.